Hi everyone, it's me again. Sorry I haven't posted for a while. I have been super busy over the past couple months. I got married, I bought a flat, which is why the background looks a little bit different here now. I also got a promotion at work, so I've been pretty busy for the past little while. Looking forward to getting stuck into some conlang videos, but yeah, that's just a little bit of a personal update. So now that we've looked at declensions 1 through 5 of nouns and Agēre, we're now going to be looking at the consonant subclass of nouns, which only affects nouns in the first, second and third declension. It doesn't affect fourth and fifth declensions, so let's get stuck straight in. You'll remember from the first video that the first declension regular noun kogē has the genitive singular kogao. You find the stem by looking at the nominative plural, which is given in the citation form. You remove the nominative plural ending for the respective declension, and then you add on the genitive singular ending, in this case for the first declension, ao. You might then expect, when presented with the first declension noun thelan, which has the nominative plural therome, and therefore the stem therom, that you would create the genitive singular in the same way. You just add ao onto therom. However, if you look at the brackets in the citation form for thelan therome, you'll notice that the 1, which indicates that thelan is part of the first declension, is then followed by n, which indicates that it's part of the nasal subclass. Nasal subclass nouns don't form the genitive singular in ao, but rather in go, where the g of the genitive singular ending replaces the final nasal sound of the stem. Let's have a look at another noun in a different consonant subclass, I ple ie pere, which means dawn. This also belongs to the first declension, but it belongs to the rhotic subclass. Unsurprisingly, it doesn't form its genitive singular as ie perau following the regular or ie pego following the nasal, but rather ie pelko, where the ending ulko replaces the final rhotic sound of the stem. These endings for consonant subclasses apply across the declensions, such that I ple belong to the first declension and ser belong to the third declension. Both take the genitive singular ending ulko, replacing the final rhotic sound of the stem, because the important fact here is that they both belong to the rhotic subclass. Consonant subclasses also fall prey to vowel variation within the stem, such that avike, which means cloud, belongs to the first declension plosive subclass. You would expect it then to take the genitive aviko, where ko with a geminate k is the genitive singular, replacing the final plosive sound of the stem. However, the genitive singular is actually aveko, because the a replaces the e as part of the stem. Similarly, if we look here at ise, which means bed and belongs to the first declension sibilant subclass, you would expect the genitive singular to be iko, taking the long E sound. However, this long E sound breaks to give us the genitive singular ieko. It's important to note, if we look here at the full declension for thelan therome, that it is only the singular forms of the genitive, dative and instrumental which are affected by consonant endings. Therefore, we can disregard the other inflections within these noun paradigms for consonant subclasses because they're formed regularly according to the rules that we've seen in previous videos. Let's jump straight in and look at what these consonant endings are. We'll begin with the nasal subclass, thelan therome, which is the genitive therogo, dative theromoe, and instrumental theronte. You notice that for the nasal subclass, the genitive and the instrumental have endings which replace the final nasal sound of the stem. We can see a couple other examples here, thenge, which means field, and eoleane, which means bat. Eoleane would have the genitive singular eoliago, and thenge would have the genitive singular thego, because the ng sound, the pre-nasalized g, is replaced as part of the ending. Let's now move on to the V subclass, sove, sove, which means city, with the genitive solko, dative solve, instrumental solte. You'll see that in each case the final V of the stem is replaced by the vowel U. A couple other examples are gove, which means plain, and davo, which means chasm, which would have the genitive singulars gouko and tauko. Now moving on to the rhotic subclass, ser, sere, which means word, has the genitive selko, dative seloe, and instrumental selle. In each case, the final rhotic sound of the stem is replaced by ul. We can then look at other examples like dire, which means arm, and iple, which means dawn, which would have the genitive singulars dilko and iepelko. Now moving on to the plosive subclass, kipe, kipe, which means dog, has the genitive kikko, dative kipoe, and instrumental kitte. So the genitive and the instrumental have plosive sounds k and t, which replace the final plosive sound of the stem. Other examples here are avike and fate. I feel a bit uncomfortable saying what the genitive singular of leg would be in case YouTube does some kind of algorithmic search of the audio and decides to take it down because it sounds a bit like a swear word, so the dative instead is fatue. Now, as we saw in the previous slide, we would expect that cloud would have the genitive singular avicco, but it's avecco, so we'll be looking at that in the next video on vowel alteration. And finally, for this slide, we're going to look at the sibilant subclass, lasse, which means axe. This is identical to the plosive subclass in the genitive and the instrumental. The only difference is the dative singular, laze. You can either think of the ending ze as replacing the final s sound of the stem, or you can think of it more accurately historically as the voicing of s preceding ze as the ending. Now let's look at the fricative subclass, because the fricative subclass is a little bit more complex. Historically, the fricative subclass was composed of nouns whose stems ended in a voiced fricative sound, the, or r. However, r eventually disappeared between vowels. The general principle is that voiced fricatives devoice or become voiceless plosives when they come before other plosives in the endings. However, this is made a bit more complex given further changes that occurred in Agēre's history, such that a double T followed by an E became tfe, the ending kte became te with a geminate T, and the voiceless fricative ch disappeared from the language entirely and became a k. So let's begin by looking at stems ending in a V. Sarove, which means empire, has the genitive sarupko, dative sarufue, and instrumental sarupte. Now stems ending in the, gude, which means disaster, with the genitive gutko, dative guthue, and instrumental guthe. And finally, nouns whose stems originally ended in the voiced r, seutau, seutakoe, meaning sound, has the genitive seutako, dative seutakoe, and instrumental seutate. And that's it for the consonant changes that occur to consonant subclass nouns. In the next video, we're going to be looking at the vowel alterations. So, looking forward to seeing you then.